What's going on, everybody? It's your boy Danny the Bull back with another live stream, back-to-back nights, really back-to-back nights. I did a Comiverse Monday. Yesterday, I did a solo, and I wasn't intending on going live again today, but there are just so many things to discuss and talk about, and so many things that the community is talking about that I felt like I wanted to. So I'm going to get into the Veveverse stuff, give you my first impression and my thoughts on it. We had the debut, obviously, last night on Will Goes Meta's YouTube channel. It was a much anticipated debut of a showroom. Talk about David's interview yesterday a bit on Dr. of Stuff's channel, and of course get into the OMI Utility topic of conversation that's been going on, as both Dan and David have commented on it in this week's interviews. There's been a lot going on. David and Dan have been doing a lot of interviews lately, like 3 in the last week and a half. So we're going to talk about it, the good, the bad, the ugly, all of it, right? I try to bring a balanced perspective and point of view and give everyone is biased, first of all, right? But I try to be as unbiased as possible and as objective as possible. So light up the chat. Let me know if you're here, and let's get into it. SoCal first in the house and one in the house. He's done being an angry fudder. He's now going to be a funny, upbeat fudder, which is a step in the right direction, I think. Seahawk in the house talking about that demo. I'm going to get back to this comment a little later. NFT Hero in the house, FA first appearance. We're going to talk about this topic right here, OMI token utility. I touched on it yesterday, gave my initial thoughts on what Dan said. I'm going to get into further detail. We got T-Beast OG in the house. What's good? Pink Panther. O'Milly T's in the house. What's up, buddy? We got Sanjay up in here. He came for a based discussion. I always try to do my best. Disney announced their quarterly results today. Hope they were good. Mark in the house. What's good? Jim Adler, is that my boy farting live? I don't know what that's about. All right. Let's get into, first and foremost, the tails, right? Tails from the Rizzo. So the first, our first look at the Veveverse was last night, and there was a lot of expectation, a lot of anticipation. It was on, again, the Veve Vantage podcast. I thought it was incredible. I thought his work was awesome, well detailed. I thought it looked great. People were commenting on certain assets looking like, and I didn't see all the commentary because first of all, I didn't watch it live last night because it was on late and I went to sleep. I checked it out this morning, and I saw some of the commentary online, not all of it. But I saw some people were, kind of hating on it, talking about how, I guess, some of the assets looked. I thought it looked tremendous, and, I don't know what other people's expectations are of the Veveverse, but mine has always been that it is a glorified showroom where you can create with tools and incorporate your collectibles and showcase them. And I thought he blew it out the water with his creation. Was awesome, right? I don't expect GTA 5 level graphics or, some Call of Duty type realistic looking, Xbox One or whatever looking graphics. So I didn't quite understand some of that negative feedback. I'm assuming that some of that came from people who are just negative right, about everything. And so they have to be discounted. I have to go back and look at the overall commentary to see how it was divided, because some people are just going to hate. And I felt like that was unfortunate for him specifically. And I think Falcon worked on that also, because they put their hard work into that. And I'm sure they were excited to share it with everyone, and to have a certain percentage of people or certain people disparage it, I thought was disheartening for them. It looked great to me. It does excite me about the prospects of Veveverse, because it is what I wanted it to be in this first iteration, right? It is an enhanced showroom that gives you the tools to create, and you can bring in outside resources. So it will really only be limited by the creator's creativity. And there was a lot of creativity on display, I thought, in that presentation. Now, I understand that there were some rendering issues initially on the YouTube presentation. So I get that, but I know it was corrected. So I don't understand where that backlash came from. For me, I was very happy with the presentation. So shout out to Tails and Falcon. Yeah, I would give them a standing ovation. I thought they did a good job. I think where Veve can do better on their part when it comes to presenting things like this is to take control of it, right? I love the fact that they put it on Will's channel, because it gave him exposure and, you know, helps him grow his channel. And he and Mr. V put a lot of work into conducting great interviews that are not like hype driven, or they're not chasing, they don't use clickbait. They're straightforward interviews on collecting and collectibles on Veve and the community. So I love the fact that they had the opportunity to do that debut. However, as a business, and in keeping in line with it being in total control of a narrative and how something rolls out, if I, you know, in hindsight, if I'm Veve, you know, I control it completely. And also, I know that up here, Seahawk fan mentioned it was not a demo. It was a user's web show that he built, or they built on their own. The demo was pivoted last minute to show his showroom, and not an actual demo from Veve. So I also understand this, that a demo would be nice. And I don't know about the pivot. I didn't hear about pivoting. From my perspective, I always thought it was going to be, you know, this showroom that they were showing off. So I do agree that Veve presenting a real demonstration of the tools and how they're used and how you build in there would be a good idea, you know, communication wise, to share the possibilities. But just sharing that showroom, I think, was a good taste of what it's like, because there's been a lot of discussion. And last week on Around the Omiverse, you know, I guess David kind of downplayed the whole thing, or his representation didn't meet expectations. And there was like FUD and people talking about, is it going to underwhelm? People who have never seen it, they were talking about it, fudding it. It's going to underwhelm. It's garbage. So showing what's possible in there, I thought was great. And I was happy with it. Could it have been executed better in terms of Veve controlling it and, you know, not having issues with resolution? Sure. And would they benefit from giving a demo, like a true demo? Yes. And I think they'd be wise to do that in the coming weeks. I know I know that they had said months back that they would release snippets of footage incrementally in order to keep people engaged, whet people's appetite, etc. And they never really did that. So this was the first taste that we got. again, I thought it was, I liked it. So let me know what you guys think in the comments. The demo was done at DCon last year and has most of the other aspects. Yeah, this is true also. But the demo was also limited. You have to be there in person, I feel, to get that demo. So I think that it would be good to show people, online the capabilities. Tails vid was just a teaser of what a builder could build and the output. And so, yeah, I have a couple of thoughts on that. One is it's just a teaser, right? And we are limited by our creativity. The other thing I think that is important to note is that took months to create, right? And so someone going in thinking that could be like something that they just make and build without effort, know-how, creativity. I think it's, I think it would be wise of them to show a variety of different showrooms, beginner and, entry level, mid-level, and then those vault builders who are doing what, Falcon and Tails can do. And I think that gives people a more well-rounded understanding of what it is. Because to me, it is way better than how David described it on Veveverse. And I knew always to discount that because Dan's been the one leading that project. So in terms of Veveverse and how it looks, I'm happy. All right. I don't see what the nonsense was about. Thanks, Beast OG, for the super. Appreciate you. This is a company, not a family or a cult. This is true also. Not a family. It is a community, but they are a company. MC1 says, not intended to be a comprehensive overview and range, just a teaser of an awesome space. Yeah, and like I said, I thought that it did its job. I'm excited to get my hands on it. I think that it will incentivize holding and collecting because there are it'll add different aspects, right? Things that you might not have necessarily wanted, but now you want because they fit the needs of the space that you're building. And so it does deliver a layer of utility to the collectibles. So, again, I like it. In terms of, I'm going to go in order of, I'm going to get back into your comments. I want to talk a little bit about David. Yesterday was interviewed. So much has gone on that I forget that all these things happen, but he was interviewed by Doctor of Stuff and Crypto Rain, mostly Doctor of Stuff, asked him the questions. I thought he did a really good job. And I'm going to do a brief recap of some of the things that he said in there. One of them, he was asked about, or he spoke about FAs and reaching out to, gaming studios and looking to bring in other first appearance collectibles and how they're always working on adding IP, because a lot of people have been wondering, are the big FAs released? And so this is something that they actually do really well is, forming partnerships, onboarding licenses. And so I'm sure that in the next 6 to 12 months, we're going to see, they're going to make headlines with their partnerships and with their releases. And I said yesterday, people get, we're so zoned in and tuned in. A lot of people are like, when Banksy and whatnot. And it's important to remember that it takes them, they talked about the length of time that it takes to get these things out, right? It's sometimes 6 months to a year. And so they announced Banksy a year ago. You're likely to see that drop, I would assume, in the next 6 months. And then you're going to see headlines. You're going to see anticipation build. I talk about sentiment being short term. And for the last, I would say, 3 weeks, sentiment has been down. That moves. It moves in cycles, right? And all it takes is a big drop to get people excited about, the prospect of collecting something again and whatnot. He talked about verticals and how they're in the works, music and things like that. So all these things, I think, will get built out over time. He dispelled one of the things that people have been wondering is brands bringing bringing utility to IP. So for instance, Disney, which they did it initially for the Golden Moments release, but adding utility to their collectibles in the future. And he said, never say never, but don't expect it to happen. It's a complicated issue. And again, veers into regulation territory. He did say that burning comics for prototypes is still in the works, and they'll be mapping that out end of the year, around December. So I would assume that's on the roadmap for 2024. A good question Doctor of Stuff asked was about, you mentioned Recur, Nifty's, companies going under, assets living on in servers and what goes on there. And David said that for the artist stuff and some of the licenses, they had a plan, and otherwise, sometimes the licensors will have the ability to take control of the server, to host the server to so you can still access the stuff, which is interesting. And a lot of people, one of the benefit of self-custody, obviously, is that you own the collectible. And Veve being centralized means that, if they, in the worst case scenario of them going under, the possibility of losing assets. So it was interesting to hear that talked about. They asked about China and for clarification on there. And David stressed the partnership with Baba and how that's integral for, loading things quickly, and phones being able to host items, having that ability because they don't have access to Google in certain phones or regions. And also payment integration with Alipay. So it's good to get clarity on things. There was a lot of speculation built around the Baba partnership, what it would entail. People had, huge visions of it, and other people thought it was like a nothing burger. It does seem to be part of their long-term strategic plan to penetrate the Asian market. He was asked about MCP and mentioned that there were more challenges than they thought. And that is a common theme, I think. That's a common theme with the company, right? I feel like they found success. They got swept up in a raging bull market. Found a lot of success very fast. Perhaps underestimated what they could, or overestimated what they could achieve. And are now, fixing some of those issues. All right. So we talked about legacy debt issues, tech debt, and having to retrofit their systems. And that's what's holding back MCP, which is really echoing what Dan had said in his interview. I'm going to get into OMI and then talk about the frustrations that have been brought about, I think, in the last week. So David was asked about OMI, and uh, he said it was still a priority. They're fully behind it still. They have no, plans to shift their, to that to I guess some people suspect that the token is an afterthought or that it will be abandoned. He said that it is a priority. They will integrate it, give it the utilities. However, now let's go back to, he did mention regulation though. And now that gets back to, I want to go back to this. Where was it? FA, first appearance. So that goes back. So this comment is, I guess, exemplifies some of the sentiment around what has been said around the token itself in terms of regulation. And I understand the frustration. So FA first appearance says, I feel so duped with this OMI token crap. I spent over 30 million tokens. He spent on over 30 million tokens, and they are worthless for another 4 years, at least now, based on this BS. So I understand that sentiment. And I have my own, I guess, frustrations around the Veveverse comments. I was the one who asked the comment initially on a Comiverse about integration of OMI into the Veveverse. And David was like, well, we have to wait and see. Depends on regulation, and that sort of thing, which didn't seem right. Like, so as part of the last tokenomics program that was released in November of 22, the Veveverse played an integral role in OMI, or as one of the burning mechanisms. There were many. So we hadn't heard anything since then regarding it, and that was the first that we've heard. So it was kind of like an aside. It wasn't an official communication. And then it was reiterated when Dan was asked about land sales. He kind of shied away from land sales again, citing regulation. Now, I understand, I think people can understand regulatory unclarity. Early on, they had an early tokenomic system. And there's a pattern in their communication. I think that's really an issue. I think that they will give the token strong utility. I think that there are going to be many use cases for the token still. However, their pattern of communication has been consistently bad, I think, regarding the token. And I'm going to take it back to the beginning. So originally we had that tokenomics plan, right? Then nothing was said about abandoning it until Reese was on an Akil Patterson podcast. And where is Akil anyway these days? They don't really seem too active. But Akil hosted a podcast on Twitter, I believe, and Reese was on there. And as an aside, Reese said, we are doing away with the reserve wallet, whatever, and pivoting because of the regulatory environment. And then he left it. And then the topic changed to something else. That was never formally announced or communicated. And what happens is when you don't have clear communication, it creates frustration, confusion, and people start writing their own narratives. And I feel like this is a trap that they continuously fall into. I believe that OMI to NFT, Dan mentioned scoping out OMI to NFT. That seems to be on the horizon. We know that staking started. We know that bronze tickets are on the way. And they've mentioned the ability to purchase OMI in the web app, making it more accessible. So they're not abandoning it. But when they just drop these nuggets out of nowhere that confuse people, it confuses people, right? And I think there is a pattern of that. And so then people start to feel like there was a bait and switch going on, right? Regardless of intention. And I think that to me is the bigger issue. They need to control the narrative. So, of course, we are in a constantly evolving, you know, regulatory environment where we don't know what's going on in terms of what's going to be security, et cetera. We know that the SEC has gone like guns blazing and is trying their best to classify things and pin tokens down as securities. So, but they don't exactly communicate what's happening, how things are changing. So another example of that is, all right, so there was FUD after Reese said, we're moving away from the old system and we're going to create a new utility program. And people were upset for a while until they dropped the article and outlined all of the use cases, one of which was, Veveverse stuff. And then there was crazy enthusiasm, euphoria. People were very excited again. They liked it. Then for a while, there was nothing, right? And we didn't get any development on the OMI side, which is frustrating. But then we hear talks of MCP OUP integration and a synergy between the two. And then that confused people because people were like, well, what about the old system? We just, we learned about the article and all the mechanisms that were coming, all the use cases. And, they said it's mostly the same. An article would drop. And maybe they didn't release the article because things aren't set in stone and they don't want to keep changing things. And maybe that's why they don't say anything, is because they're constantly feeling like they have to pivot to avoid, stepping in a pothole, for lack of a better metaphor. But, to avoid messing up. So there was confusion around MCP OUP and the synergy because they didn't really clarify what it meant. But then OMI Utility and like the staking mechanism dropped. And then people were so excited because we finally got the first bit of utility, right? Positive movement. The first OMI Utility, the blockchain team, right, that they've hired, whatever it is, 5-6 people working out of Barcelona, actively working on the blockchain side of things and the token side of things. We had heard that. And then we finally saw that first step. And the token pumped from half a penny, whatever it was at the bottom, to 0012. People were happy again. They were looking forward to the next thing, right? Bronze tickets, presumably. All right, then again, things take long, right, to develop. We're waiting on the bronze tickets. And then out of nowhere, like they just kind of, you feel blindsided by the information. And when they do it like that, it causes confusion, frustration, and, a lack of clarity, I guess, around the path forward for the token. So my perspective is, I think that they are going to build out utility for the token, right? I think that they've got the blockchain team working, and I do believe that they're working, right? We see slow progress, but we do see incremental progress. We did see the staking utility start. However, it's disheartening to get the news like that without any clarification around it. And they didn't say definitively it won't be for you used in the Veveverse, or there will be no land sales ever. They kind of like pivoted towards those apartments that Dan mentioned. So there was no definitive statement, no, it's not for use in the Veveverse. But that's the narrative. And that's a problem because as a company, I feel like you need to control the narrative. And if you don't control the narrative, other people are going to control the narrative, and their narrative is not going to be good. Oftentimes, you're going to have people who run away with things. That's my perspective. Would it be, I guess, bearish if they don't make OMI the native currency of Veveverse? My expectation was that you'd have the ability to use OMI, but also fiat, because they're not going to cut people. They're all about easy onboarding. So my expectation was that you'd always be able to, double click on the credit card, but that there would be use cases for OMI in the Veveverse. But again, they haven't said that there won't be. There could be back roads to it that would still give it many use cases. But again, there is the bigger issue for me is the lack of clarity and communication, because it is very true. Sorry, this is the wrong slide here. Give me a second. It's true that the regulatory landscape, since they even came up with that second utility program, has changed. And we've seen, the SEC go after, these are the coins in summer of 2023. The SEC cracked down inside the tokens, the commission labeled securities. Within there, you had ADA. Now, they didn't target ADA itself. They targeted Coinbase as selling these tokens, right? Algorand, these are blockchains, Cosmos blockchain, Axie Infinity Gaming. And I think they had their land sale also. So Axie Infinity is a gaming token with a native currency. Also did their land sale. That was listed. Mana, Decentraland. So Mana is also used as an in-game currency in Decentraland. So when they say we're waiting to see regulation, my assumption would be that it's because of this, that it's because of, they have their lawyers carefully looking at things, obviously. And they've got their finger on the pulse of what's going on in crypto. And when you see, Axie Infinity, Mana, which is kind of falls, it's as close as it gets in terms of Veve, right? I mean, Vive's more of an NFT, digital collectibles store, but they're building out their metaverse, which could lead to some gamification. And I guess Mana's use of Mana in Decentraland as an in-game currency perhaps is what was flagged. You had Matic in there, and then Sandbox, another, right, that also falls in that same category. So rationally and from like a legal standpoint, I can understand these things, right? It makes sense to me that they have to be careful and watch out for the regulatory clarity, specifically when I think a notable difference between OMI and these other projects is that Sandbox is Web3. It is crypto, Web3, decentralization. Mana, same thing. They're full Web3 projects. There is no separating their coin from the project. One of the great things about OMI, a part of why many people were attracted to it, was because Veve is a real world business generating real world revenue, right? And they have partnerships with the biggest brands and IP in the world. And so that is both a blessing, it's a gift and a curse. And the gift is, obviously, that's the narrative that many of us are here for, right? The partnerships and, the money that they're generating, because most projects don't generate any money, real world money. But now on the flip side, they are more threatened. They have more to lose. And they're not like, they're Web 2.5. And so they're going to dance around the regulation. And to me, what sucked this week mostly was the way that was communicated, right? It was just dropped as an aside without clarification. And when that happens, you get confusion, frustration, and people creating narratives. Couple that with the token price being down, right? That impacts sentiment also. So, oh, look at that. We're pumping. If the OMI price was up higher, whatnot, and people would feel good about their bag because the rest of crypto is moving and OMI's lagging. It went in the other direction. And that leads to frustration in and of itself. And so when you couple all those things together, it creates, fear, uncertainty, doubt. And that's my takeaway after thinking about it this week. So I'm interested to hear on some of your takes here. Let me get back into the chat. Pixel Trader, what's good? Thanks. Yeah, I love the interaction of streams. I'll be back on tomorrow night with my No Bull episode 3, Mr. Pags and Patient Hodler on. Cool Mo in the house. What's good? All right, let me jump down a little to see what you guys are saying. How do you think the IP feel people will be able to build their own Disney worlds? The possibilities seem endless. Tails, who never built before, was able to build something great. Yeah, and this is another good point. When you have artists and professional people in there, and we've seen the creativity on display in this community, it's wide ranging from making music to movies, right? With Metaverse Life. Think about what he'll be able to do in there. Think about the community engagement it will create. And, I do think that it will reflect well for the IPs. So the Veveverse, to me, I think it's a win. I thought last night was a win, and I'm sorry that it was not received well. Like I feel like it was a missed opportunity to really celebrate, I think, something that they're doing right, in my opinion. What else we got on here? Yeah, there is a Twitter space tomorrow with, I believe, vault builders and people who have access. I think that's in the morning. I'm not quite sure. Let's go down. MC1 says, I think they may change some things in beta based on input and hence waiting to finalize and then let people know what is coming. Yeah, and that's also, there's a lot going on also. So it's easy to always play Monday morning quarterback. And I say that also. We analyze everything and overanalyze everything. Sometimes you just have to wait, let people build and whatever. It's only been 2 months. I mean, but where they went wrong was saying that phase one would be out in Q1 and that the whole thing would be released this year. So SoCal says he likes the digital diorama concept. I was told at Comic-Con by the team lead from Cavernous we would have another 2K users by Christmas. I liked when Dan mocked the not your keys. Yeah, I missed that. I heard people talk about that. How do you feel about the token gated drop with Hawkeye? Own both, and you can buy a limited edition. Yeah, I think anytime they can create interaction, utility for tokens, whatever, all good. Johnny Dunn in the house. What's good? And I can't wait to see Johnny Dunn's vault. Yeah, let's see what else we got in here. The big question, how many MCP points correlates to how much OMI? I'm not sure. Do you mean in terms of staking, like how many you get, right? Doesn't that change depending on how many people stake? And follow Reese's wallet. If he starts to sell at 002, then we know how he thinks. That's funny. Do you think there's any way they dodge the OMI question in January? No way at a crypto conference. It's going to come up. And I do think that they should be able to talk about it. It's a utility. You cannot avoid the token completely. I don't agree with the idea that they can't talk about the token. They did talk about the token. David answered the questions. I asked him about OMI integration in the Veveverse. He answered. He didn't say, I can't answer that question. You know, Queen Veve asked him questions that were OMI related on Queen's Court. He answered them. So, you know, I think that they can talk about it. They just have to be careful how they talk about it, right? If you're talking about it in terms of its utility rather than what you're going to do to give it value, I guess, or promote it, market it, things like that. So it exists. You can't ignore it. I don't think they can ignore it. And they're going to the crypto conference, hoping that they do talk about it there. What is land that is not actual land? And this is also, so my also other thoughts I had on land, which I talked about yesterday. I like the idea of burning OMI, right? I like the idea of using a land sale to burn OMI, but I never quite knew what the purpose of a land sale was and what the end result was. To me, it seemed trendy and gimmicky. I kind of feel the same way about renting collectibles. I don't quite see the allure of it. That's just me. And so we'll see. Why should OMI holders care about the Veveverse? OMI won't have any play in it. Veve is just pushing Web3 people away. So ideally, like I said, I would want OMI integration into the Veveverse because to me, OMI is running on all cylinders when it is powering the whole ecosystem. And perhaps there are workarounds for that. So for instance, OMI to accessory, like they talked about accessories in the Veveverse, those are bought in the App Store on your phone and ported into the Veveverse, right? So you're buying it for the Veveverse. And, you know, once they get OMI to NFT and OMI to gem capabilities, OMI to accessory becomes a viable option and a viable use case for Veveverse. And so I do think they need to offer some clarity. Because if they don't offer clarity, you're just going to get the confusion, and then that leads to FUD and, you know, fear in people. The other reason to care about Veveverse is because there is a network effect. And, Metcalfe's law, as a network grows bigger, the value of the network increases. And if Veve is able to scale to not even the numbers that they want, but even to like 50,000 active users, which is well above where we are right now. 100,000 would be amazing. You don't need crazy numbers like a million. But if you scale the network, create real use cases for OMI, OMI to NFT, OMI to accessory, then OMI is going to benefit from it. And so, you'll see a correlation between Veve and OMI. It's like staking, right? I'll pull up MC1 like that. I was happy, right? I love to see green candles. Green candles make me happy. But I see Mr. MC1 a few comments down. Here is someone who put a substantial amount of money into buying collectibles that he loves. He's a collector at heart, I guess, right? And not really interested in the crypto side of things, not really interested in OMI, held a few million or whatever it was. But once he was incentivized to hold OMI to gain MCP points, he filled his bag. And, we don't see the full results of that. We saw a spike in OMI around that time. We still have not seen the full capabilities of staking and the true utility of it because it's not fully rolled out yet. And I'll show you an example of what I mean, which I think I showed the other day, but give me a second here. Let me share my screen again. I think it was Crypto Bro released this information, but it's basically like the top 50 collectors. If you see that first row of numbers, let me zoom in a little. I don't know if I can zoom. Just bear with me. So if you see the column with the zeros, look how many zeros there are. These are the top collectors. Many of them don't hold any OMI. All right, even though we have points accruing for OMI, but why aren't they stacking? It's because they don't need to, because they have so many MCP points already, but they don't have the ability to spend them yet. And right now, the only utility you get from staking is those points. But if you have a shitload of points, then what do you care if you're getting an extra 200? If you already have 1 million, you can't spend them. But there will come a time when you can cash out those points. And then 6 months later, there will be a reset. And that's when that staking feature, gains more strength and a bigger use case. Not to mention when they roll out, rewarding people, at least according to that old program, with bronze tickets or gold tickets and collectibles, right? For holding or for staking, locking up OMI for a year. That stuff is not fully rolled out yet. And so a lot of people are not yet incentivized. Scale Veve out, scale the user base out if they're able to accomplish it, and then truly build out those utilities. That's why we care about the Veveverse. And if you're an OMI holder, that's why we care about Veve and the Veveverse to answer that question. That was a long-winded answer. What's good, Steve? Appreciate you. Thank you for being a channel member and supporting the channel. Legal Dave likes to party. Yeah, he is a fun dude. Met Legal Dave in Decon. And again, he's working. That's his job, is to figure out how to evade the SEC. And when when you see Decentraland Sandbox getting targeted, you want to avoid getting targeted yourself. And so I'm sure they're thinking, what commonalities do we have? And that's just me thinking out loud because I'm trying to make sense of it. But again, it speaks to the fact that they're not really explaining these things and being clear about what the path forward is. And they need to firm that up. And they need to fix that, I think, as a company. They need to understand and have the foresight to understand, if I drop information like this, the community is going to have this perception. They're going to bug out. We've been together for, 3 years now, and they should know how information will be received and what the proper protocol for rolling out information is. And so that ain't it. To drop that information kind of as an aside and then leave it sit there and let people pick it apart when you know that a sticking point and something that people have been upset about is the slow development on the OMI side that we only just started seeing some traction on. To me, I don't know. They need to first acknowledge that sort of lapse in communication is an issue, and then figure out how they're going to address it, because they have not quite pinned it down yet. Ready to see what Pags has. Yeah. So Pags is, I haven't touched base with, I haven't really talked to Pags one-on-one. I've heard him stream with Cavell, with Randy. He was super bullish, I know, early on. But then he turned super bearish on the macro in general, on all of crypto. I think he was calling for super low Bitcoin. And I know that he was getting out of some of his Veve stuff. But then I saw him at Decon. I mean, at New York Comic Con. And I also saw that he was excited about the Adams Family drop. So I'm curious to see what Pags has to say. The point of that No Bull show is to just get different perspectives and talk about them, right? And try to have constructive conversations, because a lot of the conversations that are had are not constructive. It's screaming opinions, especially on Twitter. And there are people who love to, scream opinions and be proven right, and to watch other people be proven wrong. And to me, that it completely invalidates their opinion, right? Because that just shows outward bias and whatever. So No Bull tomorrow. Check it out. Should be a good one. Jordan Riz in the house. What's good, Jordan? I accept good graphics. That isn't a lot to ask for in 2024. Oh, so expect. So, yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I guess it's online with Cavernous. I didn't think that it looked bad. I don't have the expectation that it is. And again, this will now cater to your taste, expectation, and what you want to see out of something. So, if your expectation is you want top-notch graphics and they aren't able to deliver on that, I don't know, their Unreal Engine is coming out and it's supposed to look unreal. So maybe that helps. If you're expecting GTA stuff, then maybe this isn't what, only been 2 months, 3.5 years. Yeah, for the total 100%. It's been 3.5 years for on the OMI token side. Oh, are you talking about Veveverse? Yeah. So I totally understand the frustrations. Honest, they should have put together an official Veveverse demo in Unreal Engine. It would legit blow everyone's minds. Unity is okay, but there's a huge difference. So I guess then that's setting an expectation, because I guess that's what Dan was talking about, is that not everyone has computers capable of running Unreal, and I'm not a tech guy at all, so I don't really know about this stuff. So I guess setting unreal expectations, no pun intended, also because not everyone will have access to the Unreal Engine, is also a thing. This Veve community is full of nervous investors, perhaps. Yeah, I think that we are a very tuned in community. I will tell you that for my other investments, my other crypto investments, I don't watch them nearly as closely. I don't know what the total value locked in ADA is and Cardano is right now. I've seen that it's gone up. I don't track the number of developers over there. I don't track these things. I just bought it and I'm waiting. OMI's a little different, right? And we're constantly on it, analyzing it, etc. And they've given us also reasons to be upset. So there's something to be said for that. Can't believe that is what they chose to show us. Yeah, so NFT here, I'm curious to hear what specifically you didn't like about it. What's up, Mr. Planet Profit? David and Dan both talked a bit about it yesterday as well. So I think you're talking about OMI. OMI finally at the bottom. We'll see. I mean, I thought that OMI was at the bottom at the 0005. Will we go and retest that now? What were we at? 5.5, I think, was the bottom. It held strong there for a bit of time. It was 3 months, 3 to 4 months in that 0005 range. And then we got that euphoric run up, right, during Veveverse first rollout, Utility, and now back down. So we've lost some levels of support. Will we head back down to 0005 territory? We shall see. But it's also important to see how sentiment shifts quick, and they could drop. They could roll out Veveverse 100 people at a time, 200 people at a time, improve sentiment around that, have a big drop on the Veve side, and make some movement on bronze tickets. Now all of a sudden you're looking at another pop, right? Or perhaps they offer us clarity on elaborating on previous statements, ease people. You could have another run up. So it's important not to get caught up in short-term negative sentiment phases that we go through. And sometimes you just have to keep a long-term horizon. Pink quit it with the cult mindset. So yeah, I mean, there are people on both, spectrums of both ends of the spectrum, right? People who are very positive, have a very optimistic perspective, long-term outlook, people who are angry, frustrated, and etc. And then you have people in the middle. So show me and then I jump in. Don't move on. Tell me. I think, yep. My last cult, Cardano, made a 300x. Yeah. And that's another community that is called a cult, right? Is ADA. So maybe I'm attracted to cults. They sold 10 million gets points. I topped up. Show me more utility and I will top up. Yes. And so now this is just it. When they roll out utility, people, the big collectors are going to buy. And you have whales who can afford to buy. And that goes back now, it goes back to the network effect point. There are paths forward for OMI. One is delivering on the token side of things and on the crypto side and nailing utility in a timely fashion, getting exchanges, building awareness for the OMI token to the broader market, right? And then using OMI as a conduit to Veve and people funneling in that way. The other way is growing the network of Veve and being successful on getting, building daily active users over time, or the NFT market picking up and people fleeing to, the licensed IP side of it, right? Not PFPs and unlicensed stuff from last cycle. And if that happens, the collectors build out, and then you offer OMI Utility. And so there are paths forward for the token. There have always been risks involved with it. And that's what I talked about when I made a video about a few weeks ago talking about potential price in 2025. And I talked about what I like about OMI, right? Which we all know these things. But then I talked about what I don't like. Disproportionate distribution of tokens. There's a lawsuit hanging over its head. Slow development. Conservative approach on crypto side. So these are things that I've been very well aware of that could hinder how well it does next cycle. Those are the risks associated. A lot of people downplay the risks, but there is risk reward. There is a bull case scenario and a bear case scenario for every asset in the world, regardless if it's a shit coin or if it's Tesla, right? And Google and Amazon, whatever it is, there's a bull case narrative and a bear case. And we all always acknowledge, or many people always acknowledge, the bull case. But that bear case scenario is also real in terms of what, holds them back. And this week, I think that narrative gained momentum, right? Or gained a foothold in the collective consciousness of the community. When we talked about their conservative approach to crypto and how that might hold them back. And that got people fearing, are they going to miss the bull run? That sort of thing. But there are paths forward, right? There are still multiple paths forward for them. And it's just important, I guess, to see the whole picture, understand the risk and the reward, and act accordingly by your own, whatever your own strategy is. Tired of all the excuses companies with a way smaller budget, with no revenue inflows, have produced games with better graphics. The excuses need to stop. You're not helping them by making excuses. So I don't think that this was a game that they released. And so I don't think that that's an excuse. I thought that this is a showroom. I did not expect this to be a game. And so I did not compare it to the graphics of a game. 1 million users by 2025 equals 300 a day. Current average 25 a day, with Dan envisioning app as Q3 next year. It's going to get hectic after the halving to sync it all up. Yeah, I don't think we'll get to 1 million users anytime, 1 million real users anytime soon. I think that's a lot. And I've talked about this before. I don't think it's realistic. So when I think about like the card industry is a huge industry. Baseball cards have been around. They have a proven track record of collectability. It's been around for a century, or more than a century. They've been known to be valuable for decades, right? Still, and there are tens of millions of baseball fans, maybe 40, whatever the number is, 40 million, 50 million, not including Japanese and other countries, Latin American countries. There are less than 1 million baseball card collectors. Less than 1 million. Right after, everything I just said, you would expect more. 1 million users is a lot. That's enough to prop up that whole industry. And there are cards that are worth, a mantle sold for, I think during the everything bubble of 2020, when those stimmy checks were popping out, I think a mantle card sold for $2.5 million. It's since dropped in value 50%, right? For context. But I don't think we're getting to 1 million users anytime soon. And I don't think we need to. I think that 50,000 to 100,000 users in Veve will show you'll see huge growth based off of that. It's exponential growth. It's like 5-6x, right? What are the daily active users are a couple thousand, I want to say. So even if you got to 20,000, you're talking about a 10x. That's exponential growth. And you would feel the effects of that throughout the whole ecosystem, including OMI. And growth doesn't have to be linear also, right? So right now they're growing at 25 a day, year to date. But we're in the depths of a huge bear market. It's kind of like that everything bubble turned inside out, right? When there was free stimmy money and everyone could put their mortgage on pause by clicking a button on the computer and saying that they had COVID-related issues. Go back 3 years and think about the artificial pump in every single market. This is kind of like the inverse of that, what we've been through, right? And so the same way, like, things couldn't be that good, in my perspective, if the digital collectibles space grows and evolves, and that thesis is correct, and the team develops and does what they're supposed to do, then it's going to scale. And, just as things couldn't be that bad, that good, it was too good to be true. I think measuring in the midst of a bear market is also not the right snapshot that you're going to get. It's going to be something more in the middle, something more balanced. And, growth is not necessarily linear. It doesn't move on a straight curve. It has ups and downs that are volatile and violent sometimes. OMI will someday become a loved child, not just a stepchild they put up with. I hope so, yeah. And I do think that it's part of their overall plan that they've thus far have poorly executed on. Yeah. Pink Panther, you picked a coin out of a hat. Yeah, everything pumps during a bull market. OMI seemed like a good long-term bet. And it could still be a good long-term bet. We'll see. Have my own expectations been dampened? Yeah. Do I see like that bear market, that bear narrative that I spoke about? So if you had asked me a year ago, do I think there's a chance that OMI doesn't make a new all-time high next cycle? I probably would have given it a low probability. If you ask me now, I would give it a way higher probability. That's part me becoming more educated on the space, but also part of seeing how it's developed, right? And but it doesn't, but I also, even if it hit a penny, which is far short of its all-time high, or like a 30% less, people would still do well. It's just not the it doesn't fulfill the prophecy, right? Off topic, but Danny, you remind me of Zach De La Roca from Rage. That's dope. I like Rage Against the Machine. It's better than Ben Stiller. Someone told me I remind them of Ben Stiller once. We got Croner in the house. What's good? They have the IP promised utility and interoperability. And as each day goes by, they add more promises to the pipeline. Yeah. So there is that, there are good things that they've done, and there are things that they've totally botched. And scaling has not been one of the good things. But it doesn't mean that it won't happen. MCP is pointless in its current state. Veveverse and OMI, better to first finalize Veveverse and its functionality after beta, and then tie OMI. Two specific things. Correct. Rather than trying to tie OMI to a moving target. Yeah, 100%. There are always going to be an order of operations, and certain things have to be built out first. And in terms of the Veveverse, you obviously have to build that out first. They muddied the waters in terms of the language that they used, but you could still very well get OMI to accessory, which is a Veveverse feature, but it takes place outside of the Veveverse. So we'll have to wait and see what happens there, but I did not expect OMI integrate, knowing the pace at which they move. My expectation for next cycle was the bronze tickets, which I still expect Q1, hopefully, and then OMI to gem, OMI to NFT. Beyond that, and other, I guess, more staking rewards, right? Building that out. Beyond that, my expectation was that they wouldn't get to OMI integration in Veveverse by 2025 because they move at this snail's pace, right? And they don't need to get everything out in the next cycle in order to capitalize on the next cycle. They just need to get enough out so that you can see. It's like a car driving at night, and the headlights, you can see what's coming, right? But we will see. They did say while land sales seems an issue, there could be property sales, correct, apartments. So it could still be utility to buy something with OMI. Yeah, and so that was the way it was described was more about rewarding collectors. I don't know if that would be what that, and I think that they don't have that planned. And I think that's part of understanding things is that it's not crystallized. They're figuring it out still, obviously. The issues they run into is when they set expectations, because they set expectations by saying you will be, it was a definitive statement in 2021, you will be able to purchase land with OMI. Now, maybe, that shifted because of the Sand and Mana lawsuits that I mentioned. But again, just go back and offer that clarity and do away with the confusion. But they did not say that, there will be no OMI integration. So that's also important to note. If you have concerns with how graphics look, you should be able to use reshade preset to make it look how you want. Very easy to install. Yeah. What's good, Veve Wheels? Let's go. Guys sending a full demo to everyone while in beta is an issue as the functionality may change. Sharing end state space is as an output and out mechanics. Yeah. OG Vault better not bring the FUD in here. This is a safe space. Danny, you keep it real though, not just a moon boy. I try to keep a balanced approach, and sometimes I'm more moon boy-ish, I feel like, right? I'm more bullish. I'm feeling more bullish, more excited. Sometimes I feel like yesterday, if I had streamed last night or this morning, you might have gotten a more bearish Danny, right? But I try to think things through and keep a balanced approach. So we're all prone to emotions, right? And everyone is biased, right? Even I'm biased. I want this project to succeed. I want OMI to succeed. It colors my insight, my perspective. Of course, I try to keep a balanced approach though and see both sides of things and understand the risks, rewards, and try to at least offer a somewhat objective perspective. I'll be grabbing some OMI. Nice. You can sell property but not land. Make it make sense, I guess. SEC sees a security as a security. This is another thing, is that the SEC does see everything as a security, which is pretty much what they've said outside of Bitcoin and maybe Ethereum. And so the real issue for the Veve team is the fact that they have to protect their licenses and they have to protect their real world revenue. They're not a full Web3 balls to the wall project. Yeah, looking forward to PAGS tomorrow. Been on for about an hour and 16. I can stay on for another 10 minutes here. Get your comments out, etc. Questions. Yeah, what will your Veveverse avatar? So I need to make that. I need to go into Ready Player Me. It's going to have a bit of a fro, and I'll probably make him a little better looking and younger looking, and maybe a Wu-Tang shirt if I can find one. I don't know. OMI pumped hard when Logan and Andre dumped it. I don't think to see that kind of pump again until major unity and burning of CS. It's always been a long play. Yeah. They're slowly trying to get us off OMI. I don't think that's the case. Who puts their 401k? I'm putting my PSA cards courtyard up so I can put them into the Veveverse on display. That's dope. So the ability for I like the ability to bring assets into the Veveverse will also open up another layer to it. So I do like the vision there, and the ability to make your home a reflection of you. So I got time for another one. My daughter's texting me. I got to go check out what she needs. David dropped some crazy info. Yeah, we talked about some of that stuff. I don't think I saw your tweet earlier, Mo Collections. I'll check it out. I want to thank you all for coming through tonight, spending some time with me. I'll be live again tomorrow. No Bull, episode 3, Mr. Pags, Patient Hodler. Shout out to Tails for that amazing build last night. I agree. Shout out to him. Shout out to Falcon. And shout out to all of you for coming through and spending some time. I will see you guys tomorrow. Peace.